So we will be starting in just a moment. It's minute 2. And all right, good evening. The time is now 6:30 p.m. on Monday, September 18th, 2023. I call this meeting of the Lexington Select Board to order. The meeting tonight is being conducted in a hybrid format via the application Zoom, allowing public participation and for a member of the board to attend. Members of the public can view and participate in the meeting from their computer or tablet by clicking on the link provided in the meeting agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. Further, this evening's meeting is being broadcast live and archived by Lex Media for future on-demand viewing. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Please, since this is a hybrid meeting, please permit me to confirm that all members of the board and persons anticipated on the call are present and can hear members. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. I'll start in the room. Ms. Hay, please use your mics.
Yes.
Ms. Barry?
Yes.
I'm Joe Pato, the chair. Mr. Lucente?
Yes.
And now remotely, Mr. Sandin?
Yes.
Thank you. Any votes and will be taken by roll call tonight since we are not all present. Joining us from staff tonight are Kelly Axtell, the Deputy Town Manager.
Yes.
And Kim Katzenbach, the Select Board Executive Clerk.
Yes.
Jim Malloy, the Town Manager, is on vacation tonight, and other staff members who will be presenting will check in as we go. Tonight's meeting is a regular session of the board, and we will be taking general public comments. Before we start open public comments, I would like to remind all participants that we are neighbors and are working together in the best interest of our community. I ask that all comments be made with civility and respect and without casting aspersions or reference to motives. Open public comments are for items not otherwise covered on our agenda. Comments are allowed for up to 10 minutes. Each speaker is limited to 2 minutes. Members of the board will neither comment nor respond other than to ask clarifying questions. Remote attendees who have dialed in by telephone should press *9 to be recognized or click the raise hand button if you're using the Zoom application. When you are recognized to speak, please state your name, address, and any relevant board or committee affiliation. Tonight, I'll be using the Zoom timer feature to display a remaining time for a speaker. This is a 2-minute countdown timer. When the timer reaches 0, I will interrupt and allow the speaker to finish their sentence, but not go further. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment tonight about an item that is not covered on tonight's agenda? If you're in the room, please go to a microphone. If you're online, please raise your hand or use *9 if you're on telephone. Being none online and no one in the room, we will proceed to our first item, which is Select Board announcements and liaison reports. Colleagues, tonight we have a report from Ms. Barry in the packet. Are there additional announcements or verbal comments? Mr. Lucente.
Just one very brief comment. The CATS letter that we all were getting ready to sign has taken another turn and may be coming back to us again after some reconsideration from the other communities, even though they had all agreed to it. But just giving everyone heads up.
Thank you, Mr. Lucente. Ms. Hay?
I was simply going to ask setting on Zoom so that we could see Ms.
Just a moment. Mr. Sandin.
I just wanted to mention that at the recent Permanent Building Committee meeting, it was announced that the town had shortlisted the designers for the Lexington High School project, and there is an opportunity to hear them present on October 3rd. Please look on the town calendar for that if you're interested in that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Sandin. And just to clarify, it was the MSBA that shortlisted. The town did submit 3 names. and the MSBA agreed with the town's recommendations, but it is the MSBA panel's voice that selects, and the town has 3 out of, I believe, 15 votes on that panel. And I do have one item, and I just want to express my concern over proposed fees to be paid to the Affordable Housing Trust for special residential districts as recommended for the new section 1441 of zoning regulations as discussed at the September 13th Planning Board meeting. Originally, this proposal was for a $500 fee per square foot, but staff recommended reducing the fee to $270 to more closely reflect construction costs as reported by the building commissioner. These reported costs, however, exclude land acquisition costs. The topic of land acquisition costs was discussed several times at town meeting when this new zoning was enacted. An amendment to require actual construction rather than accept payment in lieu was defeated in no small part because it was expected, as represented by Mr. Hornig's response to the question at about 57 minutes into session 6 of the annual town meeting on April 10th, during the debate on the amendment, that the fee was intended to be an inclusive figure, that the land acquisition fees would be factored into the regulations. It would be very disappointing to me if this fee was not to reflect the full cost of creating new units, which includes land. Thank you. And if there are no other comments from the board, we will move on to the town manager's report. Ms. Axtell, you have a town manager's report this evening.
I would like to just announce to the board one item, which is we have received the resignation of Melissa Interest, Director of Human Services. She will be leaving us as of October 11th, and we want to thank her for her unparalleled commitment to this community. She's been wonderful to work with, and we're sorry to lose her here, but wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that.
Thank you, Ms. Axtell, and I'm sure I speak for the board and it's as an entirety that we will miss Ms. Interest's contributions and her presence as an individual and wish her the best of luck in her next opportunity, which looks very interesting. Thank you. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Tonight we have 7 items on the consent agenda. First one is an application for one-day liquor license for Spectacle Management. The second is an application for one-day liquor licenses for TP Bronx LLC doing business as Gallery House, 720 Mass Ave. Third is an application for one-day liquor license for the Lexington Community Farm, 52 Lowell Street. The fourth is an application for a license for public entertainment on Sunday, Lexington Community Farm, 52 Lowell Street. The fifth is to approve select board committee reappointments. The sixth is to approve town celebration committee requests. And the seventh is to approve and sign water semifinals fees. Are there any items members wish to consider individually? Ms. Barry.
If we could pull off number 6.
Town celebration committee requests.
Yes, for Veterans Day, if Ms. Mateas, their liaison, could speak, please. Kind of so everyone hears it since it's
Yeah, I was not at their meeting. I missed their meeting because I had 2 meetings that night. So I'm not able to give an update in depth on that. Sorry.
And Ms. Barry, do you still want to remove it?
Mr. Bassett's online if anybody wants to speak with him.
And Mr. Bassett, are you willing to speak to this question?
Sure. And I assume the question is, what are we doing for Veterans Day? Is that what you mean, Susie? Ms. Barry?
just, Glenn, if you can just speak about it a little bit, because this is significantly different than what we've done before.
Yeah, very good. I will. So this year it's significantly different, and that's mainly because Veterans Day falls on a Saturday, November 11th. We normally do the breakfast for Veterans Breakfast on the Saturday prior to Veterans Day, and then a ceremony or a parade on Veterans Day itself. So today, or this year, November 11th is a Saturday, so we'll do we plan to do the breakfast as usual on the Saturday, and decided to do a sort of an abbreviated ceremony during the breakfast, very short ceremony that involves the LHS student essays and the Minuteman High School art projects that are being done for Veterans Day. And then now that Veterans Day breakfast will be held at the our co-sponsor, Knights of Columbus, like it was last year. That's at Heritage Hall on Bedford Street. And then since we have all the veterans there anyways, our plan is to form the parade, a car parade, which has been popular with the veterans the past few years, and route that this time west to east, which is significantly different than what we've done in the past. I'm sorry. Yeah, west to east. So we'll be starting the car parade at 11 a.m. So remember, the breakfast starts around 8:30 a.m. The car parade then would start at 11 a.m. from the Knights of Columbus Hall, and it would go from west to east down Bedford Street, past the Green, past the Visitor Center, past Depot Square, and end at the community center parking lot where it normally begins. Now, the veteran car parade includes the veterans and probably the Lexington Minutemen, but the LHS band we anticipate would want to participate. The scouts would want to participate. They would be standing as they did in the years past, probably on the visitor center lawn. If there's any portion of the green that's available, we would position some of the units there as the veterans went by in their cars.
Well, thank you for that explanation. Ms. Barry, are you satisfied? Then can we leave this on as part of consent? All right. I now move the consent agenda as submitted in the agenda packet. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, we'll go by roll. Ms. Hay,
Yes.
Ms. Barry.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente
Yes.
and Mr. Sandin.
Yes.
5-0, it is unanimous and approved. Now move to items for individual consideration. And I will also say that we are trying to hold to an 8 o'clock finish tonight, as IT is trying to shut down the town network at that point for maintenance. So we'll do our best to keep to time. So the first item on our agenda is to approve and sign a proclamation in recognition of Dr. Bert Perlmutter. We have Joanne Bellinger, the Director of Public Health, and Dr. Wendy Heiger-Bernays, the Chair of the Board of Health, here to make a few comments for that proclamation, which the board is very happy to issue. Yes, please make sure the mic is fully switched toward you.
Now?
That sounds
It's on? Okay. Thank you. I'm Wendy Heiger-Bernays, Chair of the Lexington Board of Health, 67 Grant Street, Lexington. And it is my honor to be here this evening in recognition of the service of Dr. Bert Perlmutter, who has served on the Lexington Board of Health. Read about it in the proclamation. Dr. Perlmutter has been a mentor to all of us. He was chair of the Board of Health when I joined, and he has continued through all of these decades to provide a voice of reason, voice of clarity, and compassion. And I thank Dr. Perlmutter with all my heart. Thank you, Bert.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the board or from the public? Mr. Lucente, I'm sorry. Mr. Sandin, did you indicate you wanted to speak?
I just wanted to echo Dr. Heiger-Bernays' comments as current liaison to the Board of Health and previous liaison to the Board of Health. Dr. Perlmutter has been absolutely a voice of reason and compassion and a fun guy to be with. So we thank him for his service.
That somebody can be called a fun guy to be with after 3 years of pandemic is an amazing thing. So I will move to approve and sign.
May I say something?
Oh, yes, of course.
So, hi, I'm Joanne Belanger. I'm the Director of Public Health. I personally wanted to thank Dr. Perlmutter and let him know that it's been 2 years almost to the day that I started, and to thank him for his mentorship while I got used to being here. I've been in public health a long time, but that doesn't matter. It's a brand new community, and he really, as Wendy had said, was a mentor, very kind and generous with his time with me, and we will miss him very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So I now move to approve and sign a proclamation recognizing and honoring Dr. Bert Perlmutter for his many years of service and dedication to the town of Lexington and the Board of Health. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded by roll call. Ms. Hay,
Yes.
Ms. Barry.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente
Yes.
and Mr. Sandin.
Yes.
It is 5-0 and unanimous. Going to approve, and we thank Dr. Perlmutter for his service.
Mr. Pato, did you want to ask Mr. Perlmutter if he wanted to say anything? He is online if you wanted
Oh,
to.
absolutely. I didn't see him online.
Yep.
Dr. Perlmutter, if you are willing to say a word or two,
I'd be happy to. Can you hear me?
we can.
Okay. It's been my pleasure and honor to serve the town of Lexington for almost 28 years in the capacity of a member of the Board of Health. I've been pleased to see the Board of Health grow. First, we had 3 members. We now have 5. And thanks to all the members of the Board of Health, who we are now established officially as a department of health on our own. We are not part of another department. I guess most recently we were land use and development. I also want to thank you all for this honor this evening. And it's been my pleasure to work with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Perlmutter. And again, congratulations on your service and thanks from the board as a whole and from the community. All right, so we will now move to item number 2, which is a public hearing to review amendments to the stormwater management regulations. Ms. McCabe, the planning director, will be leading our discussion. We are joined tonight by the planning board in a joint session. So before I call the hearing to order, I'll allow the planning board to call their board to order publicly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Robert Peters, Chair of the Lexington Planning Board, and I call this meeting to order on Monday, September 18th, 2023, and we'll call the roll. Mr. Creech. On the Zoom, Mr. Hornig.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson.
Present.
And Associate Member Michael Leon. Mr. Schonbecker could not join us tonight. So with that, I would defer to Abby McCabe, Planning Director, for our presentation.
Thank you. And Ms. McCabe, before you begin, I'm going to open this hearing at 6:47 p.m. and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Also joining us tonight on the Zoom, I believe Town Engineer John Livesey is also here to help answer any questions. Thank you for having us. We're here tonight with a proposal to ask you to consider amendments to your stormwater management regulations. If you could just turn to the next slide, please. Your current stormwater regulations, they currently require a stormwater management permit only if a project disturbs more than 1 acre of land area, if a new dwelling is proposed on a vacant lot, or if there's a tear down, or if the project requires a site subdivision or special permit. We do have the stormwater management permit submitted at that time and is reviewed by engineering and issued a permit. Or if the project is under Conservation Commission's jurisdiction, then that stormwater review is consolidated into the Conservation's review. When we say stormwater management permit, that is, we often refer to that as an above threshold stormwater permit. That's when we require applicants to submit a full stormwater plan. That's those drainage reports that you may see where they do soil testing. They provide the drainage calculations. They are also required to remove phosphorus and the TSS, the total suspended solids. And also included in that is the erosion control plan. Next slide, please. Whoops, sorry, actually back 1 slide, please. The proposed amendments that we're asking you to consider tonight is to add a fourth trigger that would require the submission of these storm water management reports for projects that require site plan review and approval from the planning board. And if they're disturbing more than 10,000 square feet of land area, the proposal is not to require a separate filing with engineering, but to consolidate the stormwater review into the planning board's review. The planning board, we felt this was important for applicants to submit all the stormwater material when projects are being redeveloped. And we want to look at the site as a whole and make sure we had all that drainage information for the stormwater at the earliest stages of development. Next slide, please. The reason we're proposing these changes now, since town meeting in the spring, we had several changes that changed special permit requirements to site plan review, and also with the establishment of the new village and multifamily overlay districts. If you recall, we have, many lots are included in the new overlay. Most of them are under 1 acre and would not trigger the stormwater review if they're developed individually. So when the planning board was working on updating their regulations over the summer, we talked about, the material that needs to be submitted to the planning board and what really would we be reviewing, and the topic of stormwater came up. So we felt it was important that when applicants are, or when properties are being redeveloped, we wanted to incorporate, drainage improvements during that site plan review stage. So with these proposed changes, applicants would need to submit that stormwater management plan and the reports to the planning board. It wouldn't involve a separate permit with engineering, but we would review it, staff would review it. And our proposal is we would hire a peer review consultant to help us perform that technical review. So we'd rely on the peer review. And our goal here is really to make sure when projects are being redeveloped, we want them to be up, the drainage standards to be updated. There's many properties in town that probably haven't been, haven't had their stormwater systems updated in decades. So we wanted to make sure that we're doing the best we can to make sure stormwater runoff was being, captured on site where it can and be treated and cleaned before running off onto our public roadways or onto other properties. And actually on that slide, there was a picture of a property that's in the new overlay district. This is a property in East Lexington. This is one of the buildings owned by the Toyota dealership. It's just under 12,000 square feet. As you can see from the image, it's a property that's all paved and has building on it. So it's full of impervious surface right now. So if without these proposed amendments, this project and the site could be redeveloped without getting a stormwater permit or having this more thorough stormwater review. So there would be no, they would only need to submit the erosion control plans. Next slide, please. So essentially the proposed amendments that you had in your packet, they were revised through September 7th. Does two things. It incorporates a stormwater review into the planning board's site plan review application process. And then it lowers the threshold for the stormwater improvements down from the existing 1 acre to 10,000 square feet of disturbance.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'll open this up for questions from the board.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. May I make the report of the planning
Oh,
board?
please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on a vote of 5-1, the board voted in favor to recommend these changes. A majority of the board felt that it was important to upgrade stormwater management systems and drainage systems when new development is being permitted.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Colleagues. Ms. Barry.
Mr. Peters, question is going to be, why was there one? Their main reasoning if
So not to speak for another member of the board, but I believe that individual felt that a more comprehensive approach was needed. And in this circumstance, the board and staff felt that the time, labor, overhead for staff was such that it could be managed in the case of site plan review permits, but that a typical by right subdivision, if that were to be included, would create more work than the staff could handle at this time.
Right, and Ms. McCabe, just to clarify my understanding, a by right development over an acre would still be following the previous process. This only applies to small lots that have site plan review.
Right. The existing regulations would remain the same for the larger properties. They would have to, even without any changes, they would still need to go through the stormwater management permit. Except for I guess the first change is that it would be reviewed at the planning board level. Previously, with the current regulations, if not changed, the planning board reviews that, but then they do have to resubmit for the permit with engineering. The changes, the 1 acre, larger properties, they won't need to get the additional permit from engineering. It would be
Right, it
through
would all
the
be
planning
contained
board.
within
Yeah.
the planning. Okay, thank you. Mr. Lucente. And then Mr. Sandy.
So just a question about, in the proposal, there's disturbance of 10,000 square feet. Can you explain what disturbance means? Just, you showed an example of the Lexington Toyota property. If it's 11,000 square feet, I think you said. If they're disturbing 9,000 of that 11, does that trigger it? Well, I'm trying to understand what the trigger is, or if it's any project that falls for site plan review.
So if a project, so if it was smaller, so we think of disturbance as, anytime you're really like digging into the ground, kind of reconstruction, so repaving. So if there was a lot that was, let's say, less than 10,000 square feet, then we would know that they're not doing what they're proposing would not require the full stormwater review. So if it was a 9,000 square foot lot, it would need an erosion control plan with the planning board review, but it wouldn't need to meet the higher stormwater improvement. So they wouldn't be required to try to remove or clean all the water.
But the trigger is really if the lot is 10,000 or more and there's a project. I'm just trying to understand, like, if it's a small project on a 12,000 square foot lot, but it wasn't disturbing all land, it still triggers it. I just want to make sure I understood that.
Okay. Maybe the town engineer might have a better understanding of what disturbance means, but usually if it were close, we would, work with the applicant to try to look at exactly what their proposal was. We'd look carefully.
Mr. Lipsey, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, reading directly from the regulations, land disturbance is any action that causes a change in the position, location, or arrangement of soil, sand, rock, gravel, or similar earth material. So if it's a 10,000 square foot lot, they would need to be disturbing the entire lot. If they were only disturbing 8,000 square feet on a 10,000 square foot lot, for example, it would not trigger it. So it's the amount of the lot that's at the amount of the earth that's actually disturbed during the work.
Thank you for that clarification. Just the disturbance, not the actual area of the lot.
Very helpful. The only other thing I wanted to sort of mention, I think our board has spent some time talking about stormwater management fees that has been put aside. And just so everyone is clear that this isn't sort of another way around it. This is just a new proposal for regulations to increase the number of properties that would fall into it. I just want to, I think for us, we put that on hold for now. It could come back at some point in the future, but I think for now, this is just looking at new projects. Thank you.
Right. Just to clarify there, what we had talked about before applied to all properties with or without any development. It's continuous every year, as opposed to this, which is reflecting on an ongoing project development disturbance of land. All right, I'm going to online speakers, and the first in line was Mr. Hornig from the Planning Board.
Charles Hornick.
Mr. Hornig, you
Planning
need to
Board.
speak up.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now you can.
All right, sorry. I just wanted to clarify Mr. Peters' response a bit. First of all, I believe the vote was 4-1, not 5-1, since there are only 5 of us. I was the one, just to be clear, and my only concern with this was that I believe that whatever new threshold we have should apply to all developments, not just site plan review developments. That was all. They all have the same impacts on the neighbors, same impacts on the community, and they should all be treated the same. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hornig. Mr. Sandin.
So I had 2 questions. One about the practical implications for an owner of property, and the second about stormwater standards. So I was wondering if somebody could first address the question about what are the practical implications or the practical impacts on a property owner who has a 12,000 square foot lot and is disturbing more than 10,000 square feet on that lot. What would change for the property owner?
The property owner, so when they come to the planning board with their site plan review application, so if they are, required to go to the planning board and they are disturbing over 10,000 square feet, the difference now would be that they will need to do, soil testing to test out the soil. That's usually done pretty early. And then they would include in their proposal their stormwater systems. For example, we commonly see infiltration chambers. Usually those are underground, under parking lots, or capturing the roof runoff to try to clean water. So they would have to design their plans, knowing this, they would submit that material, submit the drainage plans and drainage plan as part of the planning board's review. So some of these, currently not all of them had to do that, only at the 1 acre or more. But as proposed, they would have to provide, document all that material and provide that to the planning board to be reviewed during the planning board stage. So that is an additional, part of the application for redevelopment that would be going to the planning board.
If I could just follow up. I'm wondering, can the planning board turn down the proposal, or is this a by right conversation?
Site plan review, it's still a site plan review application, so it is by right. The planning board, if you make these changes, they have kept their public hearing open on their regulations. Their regulations in the stormwater section direct applicants to your regulations. But both the planning board's regulations and your regulations have a waiver provision, section 779, that says if an applicant can't meet something, they can submit an explanation documenting why they can't meet something for the planning, for either for the stormwater agency's waiver, or the planning board can waive it with an explanation and a finding. So if there was an aspect of the regulations that can't be met, the waiver provision can still be used by the planning board.
Thank you, Ms. McCabe.
The second question, if I could, was maybe for the town engineer, was about stormwater standards. I'm reflecting on just a month ago, we had something on the order of 5.5 inches of rain in one day. And I'm wondering if the town somewhere is updating our stormwater standards to reflect the current levels of precipitation we're seeing.
Our stormwater standards are pretty updated using the Cornell rainfall data. We have been engaged with the DEP and their updates to the stormwater management handbook for potentially an even more progressive, kind of future looking rainfall. We're hoping they'll pass something that's more statewide. so that there's not inconsistencies both with different communities as well as with different boards and commissions within our community. But we've had the Cornell rainfall data in our regulations for several years now. With that, we are looking at potentially increasing that in the future.
And we're looking at using thank you for that answer. I appreciate your using the latest data. Are you looking at a recurrence of once in 100 years or once in 50 years, or is it something along that lines?
So it's the requirements for there's several requirements for design, and it's for different a variety of different storm events. So it's not so much the storm event itself, it's the rainfall that's assigned to that storm event. So previous data may have had a 100-year storm at I don't remember the exact number, but somewhere around 8 inches, where Cornell data has it in our area up above 9 inches. So.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Ms. Hay?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Livesey. I always love the shout out for the Cornell data. I had two questions, I think both from Ms. McCabe. The first is just sort of this idea that at the larger project, there is engineering involved in the review. In the new additional projects, it will be at the planning board level. And are you confident in the planning department's technical expertise in that, or is that going to be in coordination? Can you just sort of elaborate on that just a little bit?
Sure. So I guess I should clarify that the one, even if a project for site plan review comes to the planning board, if it's a larger than 1 acre of disturbance, as written, it would not need a separate stormwater permit. Staff, we will still review all the material when that comes in as part of the planning board's review, but we would certainly rely on a peer reviewer. So we talked about this at the planning board level, is that we would need to have that professional technical experience. But we talked about doing that for all of these new construction projects, because when we have these reviews, we want to keep it moving efficiently through the planning board process. So we really need to hire an outside consultant that will be able to review plans as soon as they come in to get us their full plan review, detailed plan review for each public hearing. So we expect that we would, I've done some initial outreach to some on-call engineering firms that will be available to help us when we get applications. So, we at a staff level will review it, but we've started the ball rolling on trying to get peer reviewers ready for when applications come in so that they can do that review in their, in the timeline of the planning board's hearings.
Perfect. Thank you. That's actually where I was going. So that's very reassuring. Thank you. And then just my last question is, as I understand it, this is obviously additive. I mean, we know that stormwater is an issue. We are now adding a reasonable number of projects that we anticipate on an annual basis to this stormwater review. We may not be going to every project in town, but this is additive. So this will benefit sort of our management of stormwater for the community. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, the way we look at it is that ultimately stormwater is going to go somewhere. So eventually it will make its way into the watershed and, the town's stormwater system. So eventually, the town, at some point would have to possibly make upgrades over time. So we look at this as redevelopments occur, each property would be doing their part to help the community as a whole.
Perfect. And since we have at this table had, as Mr. Lucente noted, a lot of conversations about how this could be a very large financial impact to the town, I think that getting as many new projects as possible in is really beneficial. So I would love to see this move forward. And it may be that as we go further down the line in the capacity of the planning department expands, we could add more, but I certainly wouldn't want to not do some for want of doing more.
All right, colleagues, I see no other hands on the boards, either board, or online. Since this is a hearing, I'll open it up for public comment. Is there any member of the public, either in person or online, who would like to comment? I see none in the room and none online. Then I'll just join Ms. Hay in saying I was a little concerned by Mr. Hornig's comments and thinking about what it might be to increase the number. But I'm also a little concerned about the impacts on how we would execute that. So I think I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. And let's start with these site plan review projects and then decide whether or not we want to expand that. This would remain a select board regulation, so we could decide to tighten it up in the future. So colleagues, I am going to close this hearing. I believe we've heard enough. And members of the planning board, I know you have your hearing open, but you're satisfied with what we've heard here? Seeing nothing else online, then I close this hearing at 7:10 p.m. And given what we heard, I'm going to move that we approve the amendments to the Stormwater Regulation, Chapter 181, Article 6 of the Code of Lexington as presented and attached in the packet. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by roll call. Ms. Hay,
Yes.
Ms. Barry.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente
Yes.
and Mr. Sandin.
Yes, and I would say I would agree with the sentiments of Ms. Hay and Mr. Paddo that and Mr. Hornig, the rain does not matter where it falls. It doesn't care whether we have a site plan review on a property or not.
Thank you. So that's a unanimous vote. This we pass the amendment. And thank you all for participating. And Mr. Peters, if you want to call your meeting to a close.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Select Board for the consideration. With that, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Creech. Thank you. And Ms. Thompson for a second.
Second.
So it's moved and seconded, and we will vote. Mr. Creech. Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Hornig.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So the planning board is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your participation. The Select Board will now move to item number 3, an application for a common vittler's license for TP Bronx LLC doing business as Galare House at 720 Mass Ave, Unit 2. Select Board is being asked to approve a request for a common vittler's license for the hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Saturday for seating in a new art gallery and espresso bar. The applicant has worked with the Department of Public Health, the Building Department, and Zoning Department for their respective required permits and inspections. The applicant, Molly Rapoli, and her business partner, Ray Ball, are in attendance via Zoom if you have any questions. Colleagues, do we have any questions on what has been presented in the packet? None at the table. Mr. Sandin, none as well. Seeing no questions or comments, I will move to approve the common vittler's license for TP Bronx LLC doing business as Gallery House, 720 Massachusetts Avenue, Unit 2, for the hours of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Saturday. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded by roll call. Mr. Sandin.
Yes.
Mr. Lucente.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Barry.
Yes.
And Ms. Hay.
Yes. You threw me.
It is unanimous. The license is approved. Thank you all. Move to item number 4, which is a request for Select Board support for the Lexington Affordable Housing Board of Trustees proposals. We have Ms. Elaine Tung and Linda Prosnitz of the Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees, as well as Ms. Kowalski, the Assistant Town Manager for Development, here to walk us through the requests. And Ms. Tung, I will pass it to you first. Ms. Tung, please make sure the microphone is on.
Good evening. I'm Elaine Tung, Chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. This is Linda Prosnitz, my Vice Chair, and as you know, Carol Kowalski. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for setting aside time to hear us tonight. As you know, Lexington's Affordable Housing Trust was formed earlier this year, and our charge is to preserve and create affordable housing in Lexington for the benefit of low and moderate income households and for the funding of community housing. We had our first meeting in May with all trustees, and since then, we've been working to come up with possible solutions to address Lexington's and the region's affordable housing crisis. We're coming before you today to request two things. First, the Select Board and Town Meeting approved the Affordable Housing Trust so that the town would have a funding mechanism to address local initiatives to create and preserve affordable housing in real time. The trust can only function if there is regular infusion of funds to operate and address these needs, not only as requests come in, but also to build a sizable reserve, which is 100% needed to move the needle for affordable housing. We're requesting that the Select Board submit a joint application with Affordable Housing Trust for fiscal year 2025 CPA funds to additionally pre-fund the Affordable Housing Trust in an amount not less than $3.2 to $4 million. I'm going to turn this over now to Linda Prosnitz so that she can go through the reasons why this is necessary.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm going to try to make this short to leave room for discussion. First, I think most people know this, that pre-funding of the trust is really a key to building an impactful and effective trust. The idea is the trust is nimble, that as opportunities come, there is the funds to be able to move on those opportunities. Having money available allows the trust to work in the real estate market, that we can respond if there's an opportunity to purchase a piece of land. With pre-funding, we're able to do that and not have to wait. The other two pieces I think almost more important is one, that affordable housing is really expensive, extremely expensive, and the funds can be depleted really quickly. So that having been building a sustainable amount of funds in the trust will enable us to do a lot of different projects and respond to opportunities that are there. And the other thing is that the trust funding is a local commitment, which is really going to help leverage other state, federal, and private funds. And with could be a small amount or it could be a very large amount, but that when you're doing large projects, that really demonstrates that the town is committed to doing this. And then the federal and state will move in. And I think we're skipping, this is a longer presentation, which we had a shorter one. If we can skip this slide. There's just a lot of communities that have CPA funds. Quickly, we have about 2 million on balance now, and currently there's only about 125 to 130,000 a year that we can count on. So it's not a lot of funds to take on some really major projects. And this shows two things. One, this is the CPA fund imbalances, and the top line, the first part, is the total that, if it's available, that's designated for housing. And that's 10% of the community housing balance plus projected 10% allocation. And that's about 1.8 million. And then there are the total amount of funds that aren't designated, which total about 7.2 million. I should have glasses on. It's a little foggy. And so that funds can be allocated on many different things, and we hope a lot of that will be allocated to housing. The lower chart shows historically, no, you can go back, shows historically that community housing has gotten the least amount of CPA funds, and we really like to see that come up and equal some of the other recreation, open space, historic preservation. So we're really behind. So we really want to try up to a more equal level. And if we can go now, and go on to the side. So this is, this is a little bit long term. I'll just run through really quick some of the things we're thinking of. We're going to talk about the Lowell and North Street project. We're looking at feasibility study for that. We're looking at, there's a lot of mixed income developments, which are potentially coming in, and there might be an opportunity to buy down some of them, both in terms of if you have a 15% requirement for affordable housing, there might be really working with the developer to say, can we get another unit, or can we buy down the affordability? That's expensive. Can we make this, if this is at 80% AMI, can we buy it down to somebody at 60% AMI? The next things are really just about our potential for pre-development and purchase, things that we really want to move on. We've talked a little bit about resident assistance, energy, health, and safety improvements. And the last bullet is really the anticipated upcoming requests in the next year, which is Lowell Street RFP, see some emergency funding and maintenance, Vine Street and Lowell Street subsidy. These are requests that we anticipate might be coming in. We're not saying we're funding, but these are things that we hear talking about. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't think, yeah, this is just an example of a project. I think you all have this in your packet.
There's actually a shorter presentation, which only had 5 slides in it. That's actually the
Right, no, it's Ms. Katzenberg. The board had 2 presentations in the packet. There was a shorter one that
right. That was the intention.
Used for meeting? Or was that what you were showing?
Yeah,
Well,
I didn't see
apparently
that. I just saw the documents that started with the label as presentation. So I
Right,
used
so
the
the-
pre-funding one.
That's the one there.
Select board.
we can actually skip through all that.
Right.
Down to the last slide, please. Our second request tonight is in regards to a town-owned 3.1 parcel acre of land, parcel 6844, located at the intersection of Lowell and North Street. Thanks to Bob Pressman, who brought this parcel initially to the trust's attention, we believe that this represents an incredible opportunity for the town to create a significant amount of affordable housing. Bill Erickson, one of the Affordable Housing Trust trustees, and I jointly met with Carol Kowalski, Bob Peters, chair of the planning board, and various town departments, including zoning, planning, building, and conservation, to discuss the parcel. Bill Erickson then drew up some conceptual plans representing what might be possible on the site in an ideal world, incorporating some of their comments and observations. In order to do more due diligence, however, we would need to spend some trust funds on engineering surveys, wetlands delineations, Chapter 21E environmental assessment, and pro forma development. We're reluctant to do this without an indication from the select board that it would be supportive of our efforts. We're therefore requesting your support to proceed with determining the viability of parcel 6844 for affordable community housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Tung. I'll come now to the board and go to Ms. Hay for questions.
Thank you. I just want to say, as the liaison to both LexHab and the Housing Partnership Board, both groups have voted to support. Both of them voted to support this, exploration. And I know that the Housing Partnership Board also voted to support the pre-funding request. I don't think that LexHab took a position on that part, but I wasn't able to attend their meeting. So I'm going on notes. So I did want to say that. And I also wanted to point out, because there was, a lot of conversation about this at the various committee meetings, that the schematics that are submitted are exactly that. They are just, is this feasible? And the request, as I understood it, to sort of be fleshed out in each of these meetings, is a request to us so that they don't waste money. If we're willing to see this land used for this purpose. And I think one of the other important pieces is that this land was given to the town from the state for any of a series of uses, one of which was specified as affordable housing. So it is within sort of the deed of the land as well.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. I also want to point out that in our packet, we have a letter from Ms. Walker, who is an elected member of the Housing Authority and has been a member of the CPAC, in articulating what the challenges are for affordable housing and the need for more CPA funds to go in that direction. It's a very helpful letter that we received. I want to make sure everyone was aware of it. I'll continue with the board and then I'll have my own comments. Ms. Barry, you only have eyes in one direction. Thank you.
There. So it's wonderful to see you in person this evening. And thank you so much for the time last week in the little tiny boxes. So I just want to say, wow, what a tremendous amount of work that your group has done since you got started and on your way. And as I told you on Zoom, and I'm telling you now, and I will say it forever, I've said it sitting in all the different chairs at this table, is we have talked this talk for far too long. We need to walk the walk. And this is definitely an opportunity that we need to explore. And so I'm in support of, moving this forward in the best way that makes sense. And maybe even if it doesn't make sense, but we need to do something. So thank you so much for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Ms. Barry. Mr. Lucente?
I'll make this brief. I support both of the requests. I do want to point out at the Lowell Street concept, I think is fascinating. I think it's a really good spot. Interested to see what the process develops into and what comes forward. I think as a board, we're all looking for projects like this that can bring affordable housing in larger quantities. And it's interesting. Wish it was closer to the center of town, but we can't pick up the land and move it. So I think this is still a very good start. And I'm excited to see how it develops.
Thank you, Mr. Lucente. Mr. Sandin?
As a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, I'm fully supportive of both of these requests and thank the rest of the board for your support. One of the things I wanted to mention briefly is that town staff, and maybe Ms. Kowalski can say a word or two about this, has done some analysis of the property and has also done some analysis of building housing, affordable housing on other town-owned properties. And there's an event that occurred in the early part of September and is recurring in the end of September 26th, I believe, that folks can attend and learn more about how this type of project might work on town-owned land. Ms. Kowalski, if I think you're here, you might say a word or two.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up and thank you for recognizing me. Yes, this is the next opportunity for housing stakeholders and other interested folks to hear about the housing feasibility study that's underway. Is September 26th, 6:30 p.m. And the objective is to see just the general what would fit there from a massing perspective, and to start to hear about what kind of subsidies and how you finance, whether it's rental or ownership or mixed use or all affordable. Those variables are fascinating. And we have a very good team who's working on this. September 12th was the first, and the 26th will be the second one. So I encourage everyone to attend that on Zoom. And the link was sent to town meeting members and about 500 other housing stakeholders. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Kowalski for arranging this, and I had the pleasure of seeing this with Ms. Hay, and this information is fascinating and encouraging. So it's definitely worth your while.
Thank you. So to add my own comments, I also support both of these initiatives going forward. I agree with Mr. Lucente that it's a pity that this is on the periphery of town, the Lowell North Street project. I would have been thrilled if we owned property elsewhere. But on the balance, that particular location is also within walking distance of a supermarket, of various shops. So while there aren't sidewalks today that get you from this location to those, it's not a long run. And given that that would add to the vitality of any housing development there, as would the housing development add to the potential success of those businesses, I think it is an excellent location, and hope that we continue to find properties the town has that are spread out through town that would accommodate denser development. So I support both of these. I will reflect on the CPC is faced with receiving a series of projects each year. Typically, they have not received large and frequent housing projects, and this is an opportunity to rectify that. But it will be faced with other priorities to be seen. But I certainly hope we can find, if not this amount that you're asking for, a sizable amount to be added to the trust. Ms. Hay.
So two things. One is just to continue where I started, which was just sort of academic. And that is that I don't believe there's a specific dollar amount attached to this request. I think it's asking us is that correct? You didn't have a total number yet that you want us to support on the CPA, do you? Or is there a number in there?
Yeah, we actually do have it. We met on Wednesday, which is why when I first spoke to you, I did not have a specific dollar amount, but we do. And I did ask for a minimum of $3.2 to $4 million funding.
Okay, so that leads me into my, well, now 2.5 points. So my second half point is if you look at the 1.8, which is sort of the designated 10% bucket, and that there are 4 authorized areas. If we take the 7 point whatever it is that is available expected this year, and even were to just think about it at 25%, which I agree with you, Mr. Patter, the imbalance has potentially been due to the lack of projects in the past, but going forward, if we were to look at that more evenly, that actually, my math came to about 3.6. So I think that 3.4 is a reasonable number. I also believe that the request was going to be that we co-sign with you again in the request to the CPC. Is that correct? So just before we got to any vote this evening, I just wanted to make sure that was sort of in the mix as well. Last year, we did in fact submit, because the trust was not yet an approved entity, so that request for pre-funding came from this board. So in the discussions that were brought to the Housing Partnership Board, and I think in our conversation as well, Ms. Berry, and in other conversations, it has been that we co-author the request to CPC. And I would support all of the above.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. And just for the public, in anticipation of this meeting, the board held 2 sessions with the proponents of 2 members of the board, each getting a pre-briefing so that we were more familiar. For open meeting purposes, no more than 2 members of the board could meet together. But Ms. Hay and Ms. Barry met together, and I met with Mr. Lucente. And Mr. Sandin, as a member of the trust, was very familiar with what the request was going to be. Ms. Tung.
Just also to give you some comfort, the CPA statute does allow up to 70% of CPA funds to be appropriated towards community housing. So that actually would be over $5 million. So we're well within ask, I believe.
Right. Each bucket must receive the 10% allocation, and there are 4 buckets. So 70% is available for use in any particular area. Colleagues, any further? Mr. Sandin?
So I support all of the things that Ms. Hay enumerated. When I do my math, I look at the 1.8, which is sort of in the designated bucket, sort of set aside. And then if I divide the 5/6 of the remaining, so we leave about a $2 million fund balance, which we like to leave. The Community Preservation Committee likes to leave a $2 million balance year to year. You divide that 5/6 by 3 between historic and rec and affordable housing, you get another 1.8. So that brings me to about 3.6 in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Sandin. I do want to remind us all that it really does depend on what projects are coming in proposal to see what is the viable amount that's available. These are arithmetically all make sense, but it'll only really make sense when we have a set of projects before us. And then what the Community Preservation Committee chooses to fund, because they are the gatekeepers for CPA funds, And then ultimately, it's town meeting that will decide whether or not to grant the appropriations as recommended by the CPC. So, Mr. Lucente.
Having never served on CPC, I'd like to just talk for a moment about the co-signing part and what the advantages or disadvantages are of that. Is this something, maybe someone else could talk about it, but it's sort of in my mind thinking through, why wouldn't we? And if there's a plus or minus, and just in anticipation of future years, the Affordable Housing Trust, we hope will grow and prosper for many, many years. Do we anticipate that this would be how we would do this in the future each year? Are we only doing it this one time because it's the first time out of the gate? So I'd love to hear the thoughts on that.
So let me answer a few of those questions. I have served on the CPC for about 5 years, and then Mr. Sandin has served the last 2. The CPC almost every year asks, where is the select board on these proposals? And my response while I was a member was always, select board hasn't reviewed these proposals yet. We're waiting for you to vet them, and then we'll be providing you with feedback. Occasionally, there have been some projects that have come before us, and I'm able to provide, here's the general thinking of the board, but the board has not really moved forward. So in general, the CPC would appreciate the select board to make its wishes clear, and that if there are projects that we want to make sure go forward, that is communicated to them early on. And by endorsing or co-sponsoring a request, that's a clear indication from the board. With regard to, do we expect this to be the process moving forward for pre-funding? I will only answer my personal opinion, which is, I think that the kind of projects that we are talking about, that the feasibility study was describing, that this Lowell North Street project, these are all large projects. They're not projects like what we've been building through LexHab, a 4-unit development here or there scattered site. These projects that we're talking about here require significantly more funds. And while there are other sources of funding available, it does mean a larger commitment for the town to come forward with. So I think that building that capacity is an important step. But equally, executing along the way is also an important step, because we don't want to just keep money that we're banking for a decade before we reach the critical mass. Whether or not to pre-fund will often, to me, be triggered on what are the competing projects that the town wants to do. And that's coming from both town departments and from all sorts of different organizations within the community, all of whom have put forward valuable projects over the years we've had a CPA. So I won't hazard a guess as to whether or not we will have the capacity. Forget the arithmetic capacity, but the project priority capacity to go beyond that 10% minimum. I certainly hope we do, because this is a policy priority that this board has been stating for a number of years now, and which we've been having a hard time being able to get off the ground. And this is providing us with a very effective path forward. But, the future will tell whether or not this will be a sustainable approach. And colleagues, I spoke only for myself on that.
That was helpful. I appreciate it.
Any other comments from the board? Seeing none, I'll open for public comment. And we have one member in the audience here. And if anybody online, please raise your hand or use *9 if you're on a telephone. So the speaker in the room, please introduce yourself by name and address.
So I'm Dawn McKenna, 9 Hancock Street, Precinct 6 town meeting member. So I'm really intrigued by the Lowell Street proposal and support what you're looking to do. And as everybody said, I kind of agree with what they've said. We haven't really had an opportunity to do a project like that. That being said, I'm going to caution the board about pre-funding. This is a new affordable housing trust. We don't exactly know how it's going to be. If you wanted to request a certain amount of money to do all the preliminary work, get it to a certain point, I would be much more inclined to support that request regardless of the balancing priorities, and then have you come back after you've done that piece to say, okay, this is what it looks like the estimates might be to do this type of thing. Here's the part the town might be able to do. I just think the town is the whole process is way too new to simply pre-fund such a large amount of money into a project that we don't know the execution of, as was said. So I think if you were to do it in steps towards that, I think the other thing that's really important is we want you to be able to be successful, but I think it's also important that the housing trust is able to actually show what they can do and let the community come to some comfort level with it. I think we're going to have a lot of pressures on us with all the new zoning that got done and everything. There may be other opportunities. So that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. One more comment from Ms. Hay.
Sorry, I can't help myself. I will just say that one of the reasons that was given for the creation of this trust was to allow a mechanism for housing development, affordable housing opportunity that is not time-bound to town meeting action, and that is able to act nimbly in the market. So while I agree with the prior speaker that we don't want to, start writing blank checks with abandon, I think that having a seating in the trust to allow them to react to what may come up in the first year or two would be beneficial and would in fact fulfill the purpose of the trust. And we can then decide in future years how to evaluate what those actions have been and how to move forward in the future. That's my view on the request.
Mr. Pato.
Thank you. So I'm not going to have a debate tonight.
I'm not looking for debate. I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't suggesting that we not give them anything. I'm suggesting that we consider the proportion of that.
Thank you for the clarification. Seeing one last speaker in the room.
Bob Pressman, member of the CPC. I just want to point out that in the last few days, I checked the Lexpress routes. The Lexpress route goes immediately by this piece, and it shows that it does stop or can stop at the close shopping center, also goes to Burlington Mall and Leahy, and then, of course, back to town. So me, and it's near multiple kinds of employment opportunities. So I think it's an excellent location. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, I am going to close the discussion and move that we support the Affordable Housing Trust's development of the proposed CPA funds requests in time for the CPC's November 1st, 2023 deadline with co-sponsorship from the Select Board. So as I was reading that, it didn't parse for me. Did it parse for you? Oh, yes, it does. Never mind. Yeah, okay. I lost my train of thought as I was reading. So is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by roll call. Mr. Sandin.
Yes.
Mr. Lucente.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Barry.
Yes.
And Ms. Hay.
I am a yes.
It is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you for your efforts, and we look forward to co-sponsoring.
Mr. Pato, do they need a motion about moving forward on the Lowell Street land?
Oh, we have some water dripping in the room. Why don't we go ahead and do that as well? So I move that we support the trust proceeding with investigating the Lowell and North Street property development options for affordable housing. Yes. There is a second. It's been moved and seconded by roll call. We'll start on the other side. Ms. Hay?
Yes.
Ms. Barry? I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente?
Yes.
And Mr. Sandin? Mr. Sandin didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Again, that again is unanimous, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
For your time.
Right, so another incentive to get through our agenda quickly before we all get wet from the dripping ceiling. All right, item number 5 is to go over special town meeting 2023-1. Ms. Axtell will lead us through this.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Pato. So again, as I mentioned last week, special town meeting is upon us. And tonight we are, as you could see from the packet, the draft warrant is in. We have 12 articles that are coming forth. I did want to mention that citizen petitions are not included in this warrant as of yet, because tonight we're going to ask you to call special town meeting as well as open the warrant for citizen petitions. I did want to mention a couple of things. One is that after you call special town meeting, citizen petition paperwork will be available in the town clerk's office. I will ask that if folks are submitting a citizen petition, if you can also provide a draft motion if available, or if you put something together, all of that on a separate paper. It should not be included in the warrant that you present on the paperwork. They are due back to the select board office no later than 12 p.m. on September 28th, 2023, again, after you call special town meeting. And just a reminder, 100 certified signatures are required to be inserted in the warrant for a citizen petition. And those signatures are certified through the town clerk's office. So with those notes, I did just want to also note, if you have any comments about the warrant. One, I did receive we have a typo right in the top page. Those dates always get me, but I do have that note to edit that. But if there's any more specific typos, if you could let me know as soon as possible, that would be great. Again, for this town meeting, we do ask that only articles that cannot wait till the spring town meeting, or that have been in working mode for a while, be presented so that we can give it the time that it needs. If there are questions, I can go through it, or I don't know how you want to proceed with that.
Colleagues, I'm going to ask you if you have specific questions rather than have Ms. Axtell walk through each item. And I see Ms. Barry has one.
One for Ms. Axtell. So Article 12.
Article 12 is for the Inn at Hastings Park.
Yes.
So that has been in discussion with the select board staff and it's approaching the planning board, but they're not completed yet. Ms. McCabe,
Yeah.
Yes, there is. We're working with the applicant to try to get their application submitted as soon as possible. If they submit within the next couple of weeks, the planning board could hold a public hearing in October in advance of special town meeting. Really, the applicant approached us and they were looking to have this done sooner rather than waiting until spring town meeting for their timing purposes. So there's still time for them to get their application in, hold the planning board's public hearing to make a recommendation to town meeting.
Okay. I mean, I know this is a draft. I'm just surprised it's there.
Right. So, and for everyone's benefit, that is a planned development district modification. to adjust some of the terms.
And then are we going to schedule?
We will.
For that?
We will be.
Without adding a meeting?
At the moment, yes, because we don't have other things scheduled yet going into October. We have things, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
If
Ms.
I can
Axtell.
respond to that, Ms. Barry, if at the next meeting when you're going to sign the warrant, if you can let me know if there are articles that you would like to plan for, and then I will make sure that those are on the agenda. Thank you.
Right, and any citizens articles we will also want to be hearing from. Mr. Sandin.
So I guess this may be a question for you, Mr. Chair, or for Ms. Axtell. We're not being asked to approve the warrant tonight, correct? This is just a draft for our review?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I will observe that we also have a letter in the packet from the moderator, and Ms. Axtell was about to review that.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the letter is asking for the meeting to be hybrid. As of this evening, I'm not asking you to vote on the approval of that letter. You will approve that along with the final warrant. So I just wanted to be clear, it's in there, but it to be discussed, but it's not asking for that approval as of yet.
Right, we won't be committed as of tonight, but we will, that is the request. And the expectation is that it is a hybrid meeting. In the past, we've talked about the majority of people attending, but there was no requirement for someone to attend in person or not. Because our bylaw, which would have required a 100-member in-person quorum, has not yet been acted on by the legislature. So we have no requirement for specific numbers. And the expectation is that if we do hybrid, we will be using the tablets in the hall, and members attending from home will be using their private equipment, and that we would be sending out a letter with the instructions for how to connect, as we did for the fully remote meetings in advance. Ms. Lucente.
Because we're getting into scheduling discussions, are we planning to schedule a free run-through for the hybrid, where it's going to be slightly different this year? Would we plan on having a trial night?
So it is always good to have a refresher for everyone involved. So yes, we haven't scheduled the dates yet. Ms. Axtell?
Again, we were waiting for you to officially call the meeting before we proceeded with any logistics. Thank you.
I think it would be much appreciated for people, whether you've had lots of experience or not, just given the new technology. So the sooner that we can pick a date, the better, as our calendars are getting pretty tight as we approach, November 7th. Personally, I'm pretty booked that last couple of weeks of October and into September.
In November.
Yeah. Thank you, November. I was going backwards, and
yeah.
I wish I could go back in time.
As do I. Any other comments? Seeing none, I am going to move to call for special town meeting 2023-1 to begin on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll take both of these together. I'm also going to move to open the special town meeting 2023-1 warrant for citizen petitions through Thursday, September 28th, 2023 at noon. There is a second by roll call. Ms. Hay.
Yes.
Ms. Barry.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Mr. Lucente.
Yes.
And Mr. Sandin. Sandin, we still haven't heard you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So both pass unanimously. Thank you. We will now go to item 6, which is to review the draft select board report for fiscal 2023. Ms.
Sorry, just a question. It was on the agenda to discuss special town meeting, but it was not.
You're right. Thank you very much. I had written it down on another piece of paper. At some meetings of town meeting, the select board has presented a report. At this one, it is not clear to me that there is any compelling issue that we need to report on, and it is open for the board to change my mind. But by default, we would not be writing a report.
I think our practice has been at annual, unless there's some extenuating upcoming debt exclusion or other.
Right, or something that requires it. And in preparation of the annual report, I did not see anything. So nothing around the table. Mr. Sandin, do you concur?
Yes.
All right, so we will not be issuing a report for the special town meeting. Thank you all. And I'm sure the moderator will be pleased to hear we made a decision early. All right, moving on to item number 6, reviewing the draft select board report for fiscal year 2023, the annual report. So colleagues, you received today via email, so I don't expect you to have read it. The current running draft based on input from an incomplete set of reports from the board members. I'd ask you to read that, and I have added this item to our work session for Wednesday, and I know Ms. Hay will be unavailable, but her materials were already included. So we will be discussing this on Wednesday. I'll also point out that the introduction, which I'm writing, I only have the barest bones because I was waiting to have everything in to then to reflect on in that narrative. That may not be complete on Wednesday either, because I want to absorb the whole report. I did edit the content that was submitted by members along the way. There weren't many major edits. I do believe that it can be shortened from where it currently is, but I did not want to take a more significant axe to it until you all had a chance to see it. But on Wednesday, I'm going to suggest some areas to trim. With those comments, are there any additional comments from the board on what you would like to see? And before Mr. Sandin, you get a chance, the one thing that wasn't in our enumeration was a discussion of the 250th. And
We'll have our.
because you're going to have, that's right, that was what we decided. Very good. You pulled that weighty item
What
off
you'd
of my
love to
mind.
see are my words. And so I will just go out there publicly. I totally blanked. I asked you for an extension, and then I didn't do anything for the town the entire weekend. Yay, team. So if we can end by 8 o'clock, I'm going to go home and write it right now.
We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Let's do it. All right. So that's it for this item. We will come back to it on Wednesday. And Ms. Hay, if there's any comments you'd like to send to me along the way, that would be good. Also, Ms. Hay, we're going to be talking about the noise bylaw changes. So any comments you have that you want included, please send them and I will make sure the board is aware of them. And I do want to point out for the public that Wednesday will be a working session, and we will not be taking public comment at Wednesday session. We have previously heard from the public on the noise bylaw draft, and there is going to be a public session the following week where we do expect the public to comment on the presentation. But this Wednesday's discussion is for us to be able to review comments we've already heard and be able to feed that back before it goes to the public session. Mr. Sandin, yes, I did jump ahead of you, didn't I?
Just one really quick comment about the red request for a date on Affordable Housing Trust. The Affordable Housing Trust was signed on April 2023, and the trust had its first meeting in April 2023.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sandin. Please send out an email and I'll get it into the draft.
And we just need the date that we received the Attorney General's approval. That's the one that I was missing.
Great. So with that, I want to make 2 more announcements and then we will adjourn. The board's has its scheduled work session for this Wednesday, September 20th at 6:30 p.m. It will again be in this room and via Zoom. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Select Board will be Monday, October 2nd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. I now move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded by roll call. Mr. Sandin.
Yes.
Mr. Lucente.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ms. Barry.
Yes.
Ms. Hay.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you.